quest for one. Those who seek fear will find it within themselves. Do you know what's scariest about the dark? It's not that you can't see anything, but that someone else can see you. I've always considered myself a fearful person. Well, almost. I don't like spiders. But otherwise, everything's fine. My main hobby and passion are horror quests. I've completed them all. A maniac's lair. A cursed hotel. Mental hospital number 30. You know, at some point you get used to it. You already know that someone will definitely jump out behind this door. And here you have to look for the key under the severed arm of a mannequin. It's boring. The actors overact. The riddles are stupid. I even started a blog with reviews, where I tore apart the latest scariest quest in town. And then, after yet another such post, I get a private message from a fake account. There's no avatar. The name is just a string of characters. I see you're bored. Regular games don't excite you anymore. Want to try something new? A solo quest. No team. No clues. No actors. Just you and the script. It sounded tempting. Naturally, I quipped back. Now. And at the end they'll ask me to get a credit card or join a cult. The answer came instantly. No. At the end you'll just want it to end if you're alive. Well, that was interesting. I wrote. Okay. What should I do? They sent me a link. The website was minimalist. A black background. White letters. No ads. No reviews. Just one phrase in the center of the screen. A solo quest. Those who seek fear will find it within themselves. And below was a countdown timer. 3 hours remained until the start. I filled out a short form. Name. Age. Address. Yes. An address. That was a bit unsettling. But maybe the courier will bring some props. Below the form was an agreement. A huge one. 100 pages long. In small print. Like any normal person. I simply scrolled down and clicked accept. But one line caught my eye. Terms. Your game will start at midnight. Get ready. The quest is real. You cannot leave the game until you reach the end. There is no exit button. The quest is real. Ha! Marketers from God. I ordered a pizza. And began to wait. The closer the clock hand got to 12, the more excitement burned inside me. Finally. Something worthwhile. Exactly at 12 at night. My phone buzzed. A call. The number was hidden, and I swiped my finger across the screen with anticipation. Hello. There was silence on the line. For about 5 seconds, and then a voice rang out. It was nonsensical. Neither male nor female. Emotionless. It sounded like it was computer-generated. But with a strange audible wheeze. Paulina. Your game has begun. Your first task. Turn off all the lights in the apartment. The TV. The laptop. The lamps. The only permitted light source. The candle. And I went to the window. Listen. Should I turn off the street lights too? I haven't learned how yet. The voice didn't react to my joke. There's a box by your door. It contains everything you'll need for the first stage. I froze. I tiptoed to the front door. I looked through the peephole. There really was a small box sitting on the rug in the thick light of the bulb. Okay. They know my address. But slipping something under the door, that was already interesting. I opened the door. Quickly slid the box inside. And locked all the locks. Inside was a pack of thick church candles and boxes of matches. I went around the entire apartment. Tearing out the lights. Pulling all the plugs from the outlets. The apartment was plunged into a thick, unfamiliar darkness. I struck a match and the room was illuminated by the faint, flickering light of a candle. Shadows began to blur on the walls. The clothes rack resembled a mournful old man, and a stack of books leaned crookedly against the rough stone. It felt uneasy. I went to the window to look out at the lights of the night city, and then I really felt uneasy. Outside was absolute pitch blackness. The street lights weren't on. Not a single one. Not a single window in the house across the street was lit. My entire neighborhood was plunged into darkness. As if someone had flicked a giant switch. The phone lay in my hand like a lifeless black brick. The screen didn't respond to my touch. I was left in complete darkness. In complete silence. Alone with the flickering flame. The phone rang again. I almost dropped it in surprise. The screen wasn't lit. But the call was coming. And I answered. I see you've done it. The voice said. The second task. Take a candle and go to the largest mirror in your apartment. The largest full-length mirror I had was in the hallway. Left over from the previous tenants. I walked up to it. A pale girl with huge holes behind her eyes was looking at me from the darkness. That was me. What next? I asked. Trying to keep my voice from shaking. Stand directly in front of him. Look yourself in the eyes. And tell her clearly. I agree to play. And if not? What then? There was a long silence on the line. I thought the connection had been lost. But then the voice said so quietly that I could barely make out what he said. The game had already begun. These words sent an icy chill down my spine. The jokes were over. I took a deep breath and looked at my reflection. I agree to play. And at that same moment I noticed that in reality the flame of my candle was burning evenly. Barely flickering. But in the reflection, in the mirror, a tongue of flame darted from side to side. As if a strong wind were blowing on it. It flickered. Almost like gas. And then soared upward again. I slowly took a step back from the mirror. The trembling hand in the reflection retreated along with me. But the fire on the candle in the mirror did not calm down. Good, said the voice. You accepted the rule. Third task. Open the front door. Take the envelope. I'm not going anywhere. I said. It's dark in there. The door. The envelope. The phone on the other end hung up. Beeps. What the hell? Why the hell am I even listening? I am the owner of my apartment. But something made me go to the door. I opened it a centimeter. Then another. On the rug lay an ordinary white envelope. I quickly grabbed it and slammed the door. Turning the key in the lock again. My hands were shaking so much that I could barely open it. Inside was a photograph. Old. With jagged white edges. It was of a little girl. About 6 years old. with two funny pigtails. She was sitting on a swing and squinting in the sun. And this girl, me, I remember that day. My grandmother's dacha. They gave me that very same polka dot syrup then. But I never had this photo. From where? Where the hell did they get it? The phone rang. I was already answering automatically. Like a trained dog. Remembering is part of the game. A voice commented. As if reading my thoughts. Next task. Find something in your apartment that doesn't belong to you. I glanced around the room. Well, that's easy. They probably planted something along with the box. This production is simply a very good, expensive production. I started looking. I looked at the shelves. I looked under the sofa. I checked the desk drawer. Nothing. Everything is mine. I didn't find anything. I said into the phone. You're not looking hard enough. I went into the bedroom, opened the closet, and froze. Among my dresses, t-shirts and jeans, there hung a man's coat. Long, black, made of heavy wool, old-fashioned. Like something out of a movie. It smelled of mothballs. I don't have a man in the house. No one has visited me for months. Except for pizza delivery people. I slammed the closet door in horror. That's it. I've had enough. To hell with this quest. To hell with their rules. I approached the front door. My fingers shaking. Trying to turn the key. But the lock wouldn't open. As if it had been welded shut. I tugged at the handle. Pushing the door with my shoulder. Useless. The phone rang. I screamed into it. Open the door. You have no right. I'll call the police. The voice on the other end became harsher. Back in the room. Or the game will be over much sooner than you think. The last word sounded like a death sentence. And I realized they weren't joking. What did it mean to end early? What would they do? Are they in the apartment? I slowly backed away into the apartment, keeping my eyes on the door, and then I heard footsteps, quiet, slow, not in the hallway, but right in the room, first from one corner, then from the other, as if someone invisible was slowly pacing my room, and then I heard quiet laughter, childish, it was thin, apologetic. Guys, you hired actors, right? Very cool, I appreciate it. Come out. And the only answer I heard was someone's heavy raspy breathing right in my ear, as if the caller was standing behind me. The last levels require complete concentration. The voice on the phone said, new tasks. Sit on the floor in the middle of the room, place a candle in front of you and wait. If the room gets too quiet, don't breathe, understand? Not a single breath. It was the most delirious thing I'd ever heard. But I was already in such a state that I was ready for anything. I sank down onto the cold floor, crossing my legs. The dim candlelight flooded the room. I sat there for about 2 minutes, and then it began. Gradually, the sounds began to fade. First, the refrigerator fell silent. Then the clock on the wall stopped ticking. The hum of the wind outside disappeared. If the room gets too quiet, don't breathe. I held my breath. My lungs began to burn almost immediately. My heart pounded against my ribs like crazy. And at that very moment, in that deathly silence, I felt someone pass right behind me. I didn't see them. I didn't hear them. But I felt it. A rush of cold air. A slight movement that made the hair on the back of my neck flutter. I couldn't take it anymore. With a wild scream, I exhaled and jumped to my feet. Looking around. No one. That's it. Enough. I'm quitting. I'm not playing anymore. I screamed into the phone, not knowing to whom. You've reached the refusal level. Congratulations. The voice announced indifferently. This is a mandatory stage for all our players, but as we warned you, we don't have an exit button at the very beginning. At the moment the voice uttered the last phrase, the candle on the floor hissed. It went out. Darkness enveloped me. I fell to the floor, covering my head with my hands, simply terrified. And then in the darkness, my phone screen lit up on its own. The final task was written on it in white letters. We watched the screen until the end. An image appeared on the screen, a video filmed with a night vision camera in greenish tones. I saw my room. Me. There I am. Sitting on the floor. Talking on the phone. There I jump up. Look around. There I am. Screaming. There I am. Falling to the floor. Sobbing. It was a recording of everything that had happened to me in the last half hour. They were filming me. They were here this whole time. They were filming. I looked at the screen, tearing my eyes away from it in horror. Unable to look away, I continued to lie on the floor on the screen. And then I saw the door to the room behind me slowly and silently open. A tall, dark figure stepped into the room from the darkness of the corridor. A huge, disproportionate, elongated silhouette. He slowly approached my crying figure. He was holding something dark in his hand. What kind of fabric was it? And the last frame I saw was this someone covering me in the video with this black cloth. The screen went black. I sat in the icy, ringing silence and absolute darkness. I couldn't move. I was afraid to even breathe. And in that silence, my phone rang for the last time. I raised it to my ear. Congratulations. You've completed the solo quest. The voice was just as emotionless. And at that very moment, when the short beep sounded in the receiver, I heard a whisper, not from the phone, but right next to my ear. There's a street light on my street that cries every night. Seriously, my bedroom window looks right onto it. During the day, it's an ordinary piece of metal. But with the onset of darkness, when the dim yellow lamp inside comes on, it starts dripping. At first I didn't pay attention. Maybe it was condensation. Or maybe water had accumulated after the rain. But then I began to notice something strange. There hasn't been rain for a week. The asphalt outside is dry. And yet it keeps dripping. Monotonously. In regular intervals. This sound eats into your brain. Especially when you try to sleep in silence. I heard it every night. My neighborhood. Old panel buildings. Potholed roads. And the always screaming alcoholics under the windows. The lamppost stands on a small patch of land, at the intersection of two pedestrian paths. It's a fairly busy spot. During the day, kids run around. In the evening, young people with beer. And at night, passers-by. And I started watching the lamppost. It was my own personal night show. One night, I noticed something. Puddles under the lamppost. They never dried out. Never. Even in the hottest weather. Just a dark, damp spot on the asphalt. Right in the center of a circle of dim light. And drops. They kept falling right into its center. Every night. Looking up from the monitor, I saw a lonely crying lamppost. And I felt uneasy. 2 months passed. Autumn came. The nights became longer and colder. The lamppost didn't stop dripping. One day, I was returning home late. Around midnight. It was chilly outside. I walked along the path that led right past this pole. The sound of dripping water grew louder. It was getting on my nerves. When I reached the lamppost, I stopped and looked at the wet spot. In the dim light of the lamp, it looked almost black. I bent down and smelled a strange smell. The smell of damp iron, like blood. Nonsense. I thought. Just rust and water. An old lamppost. But the next day I couldn't stand it. In the afternoon when the sun was illuminating everything around, I approached the spot again. In the early daylight, the spot turned out to be dark burgundy, with rusty streaks along the edges. It was eaten into the asphalt, as if someone had spilled paint here many times. I ran my finger along the surface. A sticky brown light remained on my skin. It smelled like meal. I almost threw up. I wiped my hand from my jeans. It wasn't rust or paint. From that day on, I became not just interested, but terribly interested. Every night I would sit by the window and watch. I would watch the people walking past. Most would step around the wet spot, to avoid getting dirty. Some would walk right over it, without even noticing. I started keeping a kind of diary, just notes on my phone. 11:15 p.m., a woman with a dog walked by, walked around. 2 drunks, walked straight through, laughing loudly. 1:20 p.m., a guy with headphones, stepped right in the middle. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just felt like I had to. Something was wrong. The drops falling from the street lamp weren't water. They were like thick, dark tears, and they left bloody stains on the ground. One night I saw it. It was around 3 a.m. I was about to go to bed, and looked out the window. I froze. Someone was standing under the street lamp. She simply stood with her back to me, right in the center of the burgundy spot, staring off into the distance. I felt creepy. In our neighborhood, only alcoholics would stand under the streetlights at 3 in the morning. But this one, he was different. I sat by the window for about 20 minutes. The figure didn't move. Not a single movement. I even began to think I was imagining it. I blinked and rubbed my eyes. No. He was there. So I decided to take a picture of him. With trembling hands, I took out my phone, pointed the camera, zoomed in, and that figure very slowly began to turn its head towards me. I went cold. His face was pale. His empty eye sockets, they burned a hole in me. I dropped the phone. When I looked out again, there was no one under the street lamp. Just a wet spot on the asphalt and drops. After that, the figure began to appear almost every night. Not always at the same time. Sometimes for an hour. Sometimes all night. It just stood there, under the weeping street lamp. Sometimes it looked into the distance. Sometimes straight at my window. I began to think I was going crazy. That I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. But then people started disappearing. The first was Vidya, the drunkard from the building next door. Always drunk, loud, but generally a harmless guy. One night I saw him staggering home. He happened to pass a street lamp. The figure was standing there that evening. It was looking the other way, and didn't seem to notice him. And Vidya didn't go around him. He walked right under it, through the darkest spot. Just as he was right under the lamp, it blinked. The light went out for a split second, and the dripping sound stopped. And when the lamp came back on, there was no one under it. Neither Vidya nor the figure. I was shocked. This couldn't be happening. Maybe he just fell, or left quickly, and I didn't notice. But Vidya never showed up again. Not the next day. Not a week later. His wife ran around to the neighbors, then reported him to the police. They never found him. He simply vanished. A couple of weeks later, a female student from the 5th floor went missing. I saw her that night. She was walking, talking on the phone. She was so engrossed in her conversation that she didn't even look where she was stepping. She stepped right around the light. The lamp flickered, and that's it. Emptiness. Silence. I realized it was a trap. The lantern was bait, and the creature underneath it was waiting for those who would find themselves under its light, those who would step on its tears. I called the police, anonymously. I told them about the lantern, about the people. They said nothing on the other end of the line, and then they politely advised me to see a doctor. They thought I was crazy. There had been a heavy downpour last night, and I thought it wouldn't show up in this weather. But I was wrong. It stood there, staring straight at my window, never looking away, and I'm sitting here now in complete darkness. Writing this, I can see it. It's standing there, waiting. It knows I know. The problem is, I'm out of food and water. I'll have to go out, sooner or later. The street lamp still cries, and I know that one day these drops will wash my footprints off the asphalt too. Don't help the girl in white in the park at night. Just run. It all started, as usual, with conversations. Our town is small. Everyone knows each other, and then rumors began to spread. First local public groups. Then the old women at the entrance to their buildings began to whisper. They say some strange girl has appeared in the park, always alone, always in the evening, after dark, always in the same stupid white dress, like it came from grandma's trunk, so light, like summer, which is already strange for our weather, especially in the fall. Someone saw her from afar. Someone saw her with chalk on the alley that leads to the abandoned cemetery on the edge of the park. No one could really describe her, just dark hair, pale skin. She didn't talk to anyone, didn't bother anyone. Dima and I, of course, laughed about it. We're 22 years old. We work at a car repair shop. What the hell are ghosts in the park? We should go and check it out, Dimke said once. Maybe we could meet them. I like pale and mysterious people. We have nothing better to do than wander around the park at night because of rumors, but Dimke is stubborn. If he gets something into his head, he'll do it. The idea of the some Theozid became obsessive for him. He teased me every day, called me a coward. In the end I agreed, just to leave him alone. Okay, we'll go on Saturday. That Saturday the sky was overcast. The lights in the park were dim. There were almost no people, couple of dog walkers at the entrance, and a loving couple on a bench. We went inside, where the alley became darker, and the trees older and gnarled. We wandered for about an hour. Silence. Only the leaves rustling underfoot. And I had already started teasing Dimke. Like, where is your ghost bride? She probably ran away. He was angry and stubbornly peered into the darkness. And then we saw her. She was standing at a fork in the road. One alley led to the central square with a fountain. The other to the very back of beyond. To the old cemetery fence. She was standing with her back to us. And she really was wearing that white dress. Her dark hair scattered over her shoulders. There she is. Dima exhaled. She didn't move. She just stood there. Dima, the idiot, moved towards her. I grabbed his sleeve. Stop. Let's just get out of here. What's wrong with you? We'll get acquainted now. He pulled his hand away and walked forward. I, cursing under my breath, followed him. When we got closer, she turned around sweetly. Her face, I can't really remember it. Normal, I think. But her eyes were very dark. Large. She looked at us without surprise, as if she'd been waiting. Next to her on the ground were two large paper supermarket bags stuffed with something. Young people. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. But in the silence of the park, it was clearly audible. Can you help me? It's hard alone. Dima immediately brightened. Of course we'll help. Where are you going? To the exit. That one. By the road. She waved her hand towards the cemetery. I tensed. The farthest and darkest exit from the park, but Dima had already picked up one of the bags. Wow. What do you have there? Bricks? He said. Pick it up. The bag really was incredibly heavy. She handed the other one to me. I hesitated for a second, and then she took me with one hand, as if putting the handle of the bag in it. And at that moment I almost jumped back. Her hand was icy, like a piece of meat from the freezer. She looked at me. Her gaze was empty. Without emotion, she simply lowered her eyes and said, please. I felt uneasy. I sighed, took the bag and followed. We walked in silence. Dima tried to joke. She answered in monosyllables. Yes. No. And I walked behind and looked at these bags. And then I noticed something else. A drop fell from the corner of the bag. Dimka was carrying onto the asphalt. Dark. Then another. I looked closely. Small dark red spots remained on the gray asphalt. Right at the exit, where the street lights were almost gone. She stopped. Thank you. From now on I'll do it myself. She took the bag from Dima. Then from me. Her fingers accidentally touched my hands again. The same cold. She easily, without visible effort, lifted both heavy bags and simply stepped into the darkness beyond the park gates. Not along the road. Specifically, into the darkness where the thickets began, and disappeared, as if she had never been there. The next day Dima didn't show up for work. I called. He answered in a barely alive voice. He said he was sick. His temperature was almost 40. He was breaking down completely. He was so weak he couldn't even make it to the bathroom. I thought it was the flu. I bought him some medicine. I dropped it off after work. He looked terrible. Pale, dark circles under his eyes. He slept almost all the time. He left a bag with food and medicine, and then he left. Almost a week passed. He wasn't getting any better. The doctors were at a loss. The test results were strange. They looked like severe anemia, and some kind of unknown virus. He was wasting away before our eyes. One day I went to visit him. He was lying on the couch, facing the wall. I sat down next to him. I wanted to touch his forehead, and then I saw it. There were two small marks on the side of my neck, just below my ear. Two neat, almost symmetrical punctures. They looked like bites. The cold from the park, red drops, the girl's icy hand, the heavy bags, her strange disappearance, and now this. I started frantically Googling. Simple at first. Strange illness after the park. Weakness and fever. Nothing. Then, out of desperation, I went to those same city public groups and started searching for the keywords girl in white, in the park, and I found it. Several posts from the last couple of years that everyone considered the ravings of crazy people. And then a guy wrote that his friend had caught a strange cold. After helping some girl carry her bags in the park, he was flat out for a week. And then they found two strange spots on his arm. Another girl told me how she simply got lost in the park in the evening, and the pale girl in white walked her to the exit. She simply took her elbow for a couple of seconds. Result, the same week of illness, extreme weakness, and an insect bite on the shoulder. It all fit. She touches a person, and that's enough. A light touch. But if you, like Dimka, carry her groceries and chat with her the whole way, you get the full dose. What was in those bags? I'm afraid to even imagine. Dima pulled through. Exactly 7 days later, the fever dropped. He was weak, and lost about 10 kilograms. The marks on his neck disappeared, but he changed. He became twitchy. He's afraid of the dark. He doesn't talk about that evening in the park, at all. If I start, he just gets up and leaves, and I know what it was. My brain refuses to accept it. But facts are a simple thing. In our city, in the old park, a creature lives. It looks like a girl. It talks like a person, but it's not a person. It hunts. It simply asks for help, and people help it, and then they lie dying for a week. I'm writing this to warn everyone. I don't know if it's a vampire, a hoopier, or some other crap they write about in books. I don't care what the name is. I know it's real, and it's dangerous. So if you decide to take an evening stroll through the park, and see a lonely girl in a white dress asking for help, just turn around and walk away. Don't talk, don't help, and do not under any circumstances touch her. Your life may depend on it. Have you ever heard the soft ringing of a bell at night? If so, pray that it doesn't get louder. It all started 3 weeks ago. I live in the old part of town, in a house that saw the SAR, the kind with high ceilings, creaky floors and a strange aura. It's as if these walls have absorbed the entire history of their former residents. I always loved this atmosphere. It seemed cozy to me until recently. I was sitting at my desk one night. It was 2 in the morning, when I heard a thin, distinct ringing sound. It was very melodic, like someone walking far, far away, with a small bell. My first thought was that it was some weirdo walking his dog, with a bell on his collar, or maybe a cyclist. I looked out the window. The street was completely empty, the streetlights bathing the cobblestones in yellow light. Not a soul, not even a car. Strange, I thought, but quickly dismissed it. You never know what might be heard in an old house. The next night, the sound was repeated, around the same time, but this time it seemed clearer, louder, as if the source of the sound had become closer. I looked out the window again. The same picture, an empty, silent street. The sound was coming from the old park at the end of the street. It would come closer and then recede, as if someone were walking with their hands, and there was something unnatural about it. The rhythm was too monotonous, too mechanical. No human walks like that. I tried searching online for something about the sound of a bell ringing at night, but the search engine only returned Christmas stories and articles about cows. I felt like an idiot, but I only managed to fall asleep that night in the early morning, when the ringing finally stopped. The third night, I was already waiting. I don't know why, but I had some kind of uneasy premonition, and sure enough, around 2 in the morning, I heard it again. This time it was really close, as if it were walking right down my side of the street. I crept up to the window and very carefully, trying not to creak the parquet flooring, peered out. The street was empty, but the sound, it was right under my window. I could have sworn I heard it as clearly as a bell ringing in my room, and then I noticed something else. The neighbor's dog, an old and eternally sleepy Labrador, who usually slept like the dead, was whining. She huddled in the far corner of her yard, and quietly whined, looking out at the empty street. Animals sense things that we don't see. I decided to talk to the neighbors. I asked the old lady from the apartment across the street if she had heard anything strange at night. She looked at me strangely and crossed herself. "Don't listen to him, son," she whispered. "It's the bell ringer. If you hear it, close the windows and don't look out. Wait until it goes away." I thought she was just old and superstitious. Bell ringer. What nonsense. But her frightened eyes wouldn't leave my head. On the 4th night, I decided to record the sound. I put my phone on the windowsill with the digital audio turned on. The ringing started right on schedule, loud, intrusive, right in my ears. I couldn't resist and looked out. Empty. But when I listened to the recording in the morning, there was only silence. No ringing. Just a quiet hiss. That's when I became truly scared. It wasn't in my head. It was something that ordinary devices don't record. I started looking for information in local archives. On a forum about, hasty urban history, I found a short article in a 100-year-old newspaper. They talked about a country of illness that was decimating the residents of our area. People started complaining of insomnia, a quiet ringing that no one but them could hear. A week later, they died. Doctors couldn't find the cause. The article ended with the phrase, "People whisper that it's the bell ringer coming, taking his victim." 5th night, I drew the curtains and turned up the music in my headphones. I tried to ignore it, but around 2 in the morning, the ringing broke through even the deafening horn. It wasn't outside, it was in the entryway. I froze. Through the music and the reports, I heard something slowly climbing the stairs. Every step was accompanied by that damned ringing. Heavy, shuffling footsteps and, 1st floor, 2nd. My apartment is on the 3rd. I tore off my headphones. In the deafening silence, the sound became crystal clear. It was right outside my door. I went to the door. My heart was ready to jump out. I closed my eyes and pressed myself to it. A figure stood in the entryway, directly across from my door. It was tall, taller than any person I'd ever seen. It was dressed in a shapeless black robe that seemed to absorb the dim light from the light bulb. The hood was pulled down so low that its face was invisible. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing. The figure had no head. A huge, rusty old bell, like the kind they hang in belfries, rested on its shoulders near its head. It was covered in dark stains, as if from dirt or blood. It was the source of the sound. With every movement, even the slightest, the creature's small tongue inside slammed against the wall, producing that very ringing sound. The figure slowly, very slowly, turned its bell toward me, as if it were looking straight at me. At that moment the ringing stopped, and absolute silence fell. I jumped back from the door, covering my mouth with my hand, to keep from screaming. I backed away, deeper into the room, and then there was a sound that made my blood run cold. A loud, drawn-out, booming ring of a bell. The shock wave passed through the door, through the walls, through me. The glass in the windows rattled, books fell from the shelf, and then everything was silent. I sat on the floor until dawn. When the first rays of sun touched my window, I dared to step under those doors. There was no one in the entryway. The next day I fell ill. It started with extreme weakness, then a fever. The doctors shrugged their shoulders. The tests showed nothing. Just an unknown virus. Now it's the 6th day. I can barely raise my hand to type this. Every night I hear it. The ringing no longer comes closer. It's always near. Quiet, insistent. It's in my head. If one night you hear the soft ringing of a bell, run. Don't try to find it. Don't look out the window. And never ever look through the peephole. Because if the bell ringer looks at you, he'll ring his bell one last time. Especially for you. I think I hear footsteps on the stairs. The ringing is getting louder. I can't help but raise my hand. I can't help but raise my hand.